The countdown is on, but you're not alone. This is Countdown to College, your weekly guide from Education Quest Foundation, here to help you plan, apply, and pay for college one step at a time. I'm your host, Gage, and today I'm happy to be joined by Jodie Meyer, a research analyst at the Nebraska Department of Labor. Hi, Jodie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Gage. Thanks for having me today.
Now, many seniors are currently, finalizing their college decisions and their major choices. And one factor that can pretty significantly impact these decisions is the job market and in-demand jobs. So today we're going to be kind of, breaking down, as the title says, what's trending on the job chart. So Jodie, let's just start with the big picture. Why should students care about which jobs are trending?
Yes, that is a great question for students, and definitely kind of a why should we care about this exactly? I think it's really important to kind of look at it to kind of help students decide what kind of career they might want in the future, and just kind of seeing what's needed now can help you see what's growing and what's shrinking, and just kind of help make better choices in your career path and your planning. One of the things that I do in my work is I do employment projections. So I'm looking into the future. I'm kind of doing that work for you guys to come up with the numbers so you can use it. And it is really important because you want to see like when you're out of college or out of whatever job training you're deciding to do, or even just when you graduate high school, you want to see what's out there. So you don't want to spend a bunch of time and effort on something that might not be there in the future. So it's good to look at what's trending now and what's trending down the road.
Yeah, I've always found, job forecasting and that area so fascinating. So I'm so glad we got you on the podcast today because it's definitely very good to set yourself up for success. Just when you're like making these big decisions. College is a big decision.
Yeah.
So, when students start this process, what are some good, websites or tools students can use to explore careers and see what's in demand?
Yeah, there are tons of them, but I think I'm going to kind of focus on three that I think are kind of the most, I don't know, user-friendly and definitely things that I think are just really nicely geared towards students. And Gage will make sure to link all of the websites in the caption here, so I don't have to explain all of that and how to find them right now. But the first one I want to talk about was the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So this is really kind of the flagship product of the National Bureau of Labor Statistics. They do a lot of work talking to employers and seeing what kind of things like what do you need to do this job? They have a lot of things where they look at the future outlook. So they're where you can go to see nationally what's that job outlook going to look at. There's also My Next Move from ONET and just ONET in general. Really good resource there. They have so much information. It gives you jobs, information, of course, knowledge, skills, abilities to do the job. So kind of what a typical day would look like for somebody. They have information on what occupations might be related to the one you're looking at. So if you're kind of like, I like some stuff with this one, but like, what else could I possibly do if I went down this career path? Um, there's also just a lot of good information on there on pay and potential benefits and things for jobs too. And there's a nice little interest profile or quiz that you can take. So if you need to kind of have an idea and you want to take a little quiz to figure out what your interest might be, you can do that. And then kind of moving to a Nebraska resource is our high wage, high skill, and high demand occupations. We have a whole website dedicated to exploring those. So we kind of come up with that concept by just seeing like what's pays higher wages than the typical occupation in Nebraska. We look at anything that kind of takes longer in an education or training program for the high skill measure. So it has to be getting out of high school and then just some extra effort, such as an apprenticeship or going on to get a higher degree. So that's kind of what we're meaning when we're talking skill. And then our high demand, it just has to be growing faster than our other occupations in the area. So we have that. You can find links on our AnyWorks website, but I'll also make sure that you guys will get the link below.
Yeah, they'll be in the description, and I'm glad you have some user-friendly options, just because I know looking at all these numbers and statistics sometimes can be overwhelming. But
Yes.
now let's just get down to the nitty-gritty already. What are the kinds of jobs that are currently in the top five for growth or hiring demand?
Yeah, so I decided to take a look at this on our job postings that we have on our AnyWorks website. I've been actually looking at this data for quite a long time, so I've seen the trends, and they have been very similar over the years. We're seeing a lot of healthcare, so we're seeing registered nurses, we're seeing physicians, licensed practical nurses, physical therapists. So just healthcare is just a very growing field. It's been growing for a while. It's still growing now. Part of the need is not just, we need a lot of people in it, and some of it is our population is aging. And so, as you age, you tend to need more healthcare. And we also have a lot of people in those occupations that are getting older and leaving the occupation. They're hitting retirement themselves, so we need to replace them. So healthcare has just been huge. We also are seeing actually a lot of management type occupations advertised, a lot of general managers. And I think a lot of that has to do with stores getting different locations. They're kind of growing and expanding in each of those locations, and things need a manager, or each headquarter needs that. So that's there. And then you do see things like retail, customer service, just because those are pretty big. You're also seeing computer occupations. We're seeing like systems engineers, architects, things like that. And education. Education is another big one. Teaching assistants, teachers in general, are definitely needed as well.
I know you mentioned you've been kind of watching the trends over the
Mhm.
years. So how have like these in-demand jobs kind of changed over the past few years, or are they still the same ones up at the top? What's that look like?
Yeah, so definitely, kind of on the job postings, you are seeing those same trends over the years. But then also, if I'm looking at my high wage, high skill, high demand occupations, those H3 occupations that I mentioned earlier. Those we are seeing for the most part the same jobs. Kind of the big ones we're seeing there are truck drivers, general operations managers. You see the registered nurses. You're also seeing software developers. But you're also seeing things like accountants and auditors, financial managers, human resource specialists, and some of those occupations are ones that are found in a wide variety of industries. And so we'll kind of need those. Like almost every business, at least larger businesses, will have an accountant on staff, or someone to be their financial manager. Most businesses have HR departments, so the human resources side. You're also seeing some trades on there, such as electricians and carpenters and things like that. And I've kind of noticed that the orders kind of shifted a bit over the years. But so, like, some of these are in the top 10 now, used to be in the top 25. But for the most part, they've all just kind of stayed the same, and they've all kind of tended to be towards the top of that list.
And so let's say, a student chooses one of these careers or just a career in general. How can a student kind of figure out what kind of education or training they'll need for those careers?
Yeah, so all of those websites I mentioned earlier actually has information on that as well. But some other ways that you can find information on that is to, talk to people working in the profession, kind of talk to them. What was their education path? How did they get to where they are now? You can also look at the current job postings for careers, and there's tons of spots where you can go and look online. You can look at our AnyWorks website for job postings, but there's a lot of other places out there. Just kind of look at the postings for careers you're interested in and kind of see what's required. And also kind of what's the preferred education, because sometimes, they'll list both and it'll be different. Like sometimes we need this minimum requirement, but we would prefer if.
Mm.
So that's something to look into as well.
And when it comes to, education, you learn skills to what skills, both technical and personal, are employers really looking for today?
So we actually do have a survey that we do where we ask employers, and kind of the top things that they tell us is they're looking for leadership, critical thinking, problem solving, and customer service. Those are things that they keep very much so wanting. Um, and you can also, I also did kind of a look at our job postings right now to see like, um, what are they showing? They're showing also those leadership, critical thinking, problem solving, customer service skills. But they're also looking for things such as Microsoft Office skills. So just using, Word, PowerPoint, all of those. You're also seeing things such as record keeping, inventory management, stuff like that. So, just kind of recording what you do, things like that, just kind of, and that's not just, taking inventory of something, but it can also mean like writing a standard operating procedure about how you did something, like recording your process on things too. And then we are also seeing a couple other skills such as welding, that's on there. And then there is also AI software is starting to get kind of showing up a lot more on the list, just kind of knowing that and how to work with AI. So kind of a whole variety of skills that are out there, but a lot of them though are found everywhere. So
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting because a lot of those sound, pretty universal.
mhm.
And so how can students kind of build skills or some of those, more universal skills that will help them adapt if their career paths change down the road?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely, some of that, you will learn in school, but some of that too you can learn through, volunteering and doing things there. And another thing that I always like to try to mention to people is focus on transferable skills. So there's a lot of skills, as we mentioned, that can be used in a lot of different occupations. And I mean, there's some that are more obvious, like, yeah, customer service, you can use that in a lot of things, or critical thinking. But there's some things that you can be a little more creative. I like to use some examples from some of my coworkers in my office. We actually have someone who has a degree in library science, so he went to school to be a librarian. And that career path kind of didn't work out for him, but he's now working in my office as a research analyst. And his skills from that are very valuable because a lot of the work that we do is helping people find information. So people will call us up and ask for, questions about the labor market and where to find things. And his skills that he learned in that are really good for the job we have now. So I do always like to kind of, encourage people to think out of the box and kind of think of like ways those skills can transfer to other things.
Yeah, I've mentioned it a couple times on this podcast, but I was actually a theater major and now I work in, marketing communications, and it's because communications and storytelling are really, really transferable skill. And so I always tell students, don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's definitely a lot of movement you can do if you need to.
Yeah, we have a whole variety of degrees in my office too. We also have someone who has a doctorate degree in music.
Okay.
Yeah, and he actually, kind of found that he wasn't really finding much in the way of stuff there, but he really liked data visualization and he really liked working with numbers and math. And so he kind of learned online actually how to do some data visualization and kind of did online trainings and things there. And that kind of gave him skills. And that's how he got the job he does now and he does a lot of the data visualizations in our office now.
That's cool. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I know we brought up artificial intelligence just briefly as one of the skills that are up and coming. How do you think artificial intelligence in general will affect the types of jobs available and the skills people will need?
Yeah, so this has definitely been a topic of lots of discussion. So I was really glad to have you bring this one up. I do really think that AI, one of the things we've been seeing is we think it's going to help with those repetitive kind of tasks that people do in their job, such as like data entry, basic and analysis of things, first drafts. I know a lot of IT type occupations are using it for basic coding. So kind of any job where like if your job is devoted to doing only that, those are more likely to be taken over by AI. But luckily, a lot of jobs are not just devoted to those types of tasks. Most jobs have a wide variety of different things that you're going to be doing. And so we've kind of learned that like jobs that require human judgment, working on, actual relationships with people, such as, teaching people, counseling, healthcare, things like that, will still be here. We also think skilled trades will still be around. especially if it's something that, you have to physically be there. Like if you're repairing something or building something, or if you're, putting in something new in somebody's home, like you have to physically be there.
Mm.
But we kind of think that AI is really going to kind of be more of a side tool for a lot of jobs. And I think that the skills that are going to be important in the future are going to be just how to use AI as a tool, and a lot of critical thinking, communications, adaptability. So those jobs, so kind of, using those in tandem with other skills that you would have. So kind of things like specific job skills that you might have with that tech literacy, such as maybe like you're a nurse and you understand everything with nursing, but you want to kind of focus on being able to understand how AI diagnostics look. So, things like that. So, kind of using it as a tool and learning how to use it as a tool. Kind of let the AI do the repetitive things, but you still have to be human. Let it free you up to do those human tasks that only a person can do, but kind of use that as a tool. So I think that that's kind of where we're headed and kind of what might be going on with the future of AI and kind of how it might impact the workforce.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective just because, I mean, technology changes day by day. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, I think of the job that I do just working with data and hearing people that have been here for a very long time. They remember early on, like using punch cards to try to enter data and just like the way they had to try to crunch the numbers compared to what we have now. And that was, a lot of the, just spreadsheets and databases
Hmm.
and just, a lot of things with computers made it so the job was easier, and kind of freed up analysts to do other things instead of, working on putting punch cards through a machine all the time to get the numbers. So it just kind of shifts work. And I think that AI is just going to be another one of those that will kind of shift how things are done, but I think things will still be done.
That's great. All right, Jodie, I have one final question for you. What advice would you give to students who, they want to choose a career that's both in demand, but also something they'll enjoy?
Yeah, so I thought this was a great question. So I think one thing you really do kind of think about is like, what does enjoy mean to you? Like, do you need to be passionate about the subject matter itself, or is it more about the daily experience in your job? So kind of like what types of problems you might solve, what people you're working with, kind of how much autonomy you have. So how much can you work independently, and where do you work? So for example, you might not be like really passionate about something like insurance, but you'll love to work in an analytical setting or helping people navigate complex decisions, kind of having a good work-life balance. Um, and so, kind of think about like all of those things too when you're trying to think about like your passions. And also think about like what kind of industry you might want to work in because that can matter quite a bit. I always give examples of how nurses work in all kinds of different things. I mean, I think like you think nurse and you think about like your doctor's office or maybe a hospital, but there's a school nurse. There's nurses in every school. There's also some manufacturing companies that employ nurses. Like if they're a larger manufacturing company, they'll have a nurse on hand. So, I mean, working in a school as a nurse is much different than working in a hospital. So you got to kind of think about that too. And think like, okay, this thing's in demand, but I don't know if I really want to work in a hospital. But yeah, it would be cool to work in the school. So, kind of keep that in mind when you're kind of looking. Um, and when you're looking on the demand side, kind of, look at lots of things like job postings, salary ranges, the projections for the growth, but look at geographically where it's in demand too. So something might be demand in your area, but it's not in other places, or it might not be in demand in your area, but it is in the state as a whole. So make sure to look at that as well. So yeah, and that's kind of my advice. Kind of figure out kind of what does enjoy mean to you, and kind of think about all those different factors that can go into that.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I have a theater degree, but this doesn't really look like a theater, but I still love what I do because it's still a form of storytelling. And I mean, I still do acting on the side, but there's just a lot you can do. Don't feel, like I said, all eggs in one basket. You don't have to live your life like that.
Yeah, and my career path was kind of an interesting one too, because I was one of those that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left high school. And then in college, I kind of took as many gen ed classes as I could before I had to settle on a major. And I found that I was gravitating towards psychology and sociology classes, so I ultimately majored in that. But I also really like the hard sciences, so I did a biology minor as well, just because I really found that interesting. And then I ended up going to grad school and got a master's degree in education. And that one was kind of a weird curveball. People are like, why are you working in economic statistics now? And I'm like, no, I did a lot of research, like a lot of survey research, which we do a lot of in my office. And just dealing with the numbers and the data and statistics, you do that a lot. And when you're doing research experiments and things for psychology and sociology. And the education part, I really like that. I kind of thought when I was younger that maybe I'd grow up to be a teacher. And I kind of decided I didn't want to really be in a classroom all day, but I still wanted to try to teach people. And so I get to do that in my job now. Like I get to go out and give presentations, I get to explain data to people, how to use it, how we come up with it. So I still get to do that type of thing in my job, even though I'm not a teacher. So you can
Yeah, I
get a
love
lot of
that.
that kind of fulfillment even when you're not working and where you think you were going to end up working.
Yeah. Okay, well, that wraps us up. Thank you, Jody, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And to our audience, if you ever need help with anything college related, you can contact an Education Quest office near you for free help. You can find our contact information or schedule an appointment at educationquest.org. While you are there, make sure you sign up for the weekly Countdown to College email that's filled with all sorts of college tips and tricks. And finally, just help us get this message out to as many students and families as possible by subscribing to this podcast on your favorite platform and hitting the button on this episode. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.